Hello everyone, my name is Slumperd and welcome to a new campaign diary. As you can see, I'm standing now. Last we left off, the party was exploring a haunted house in which they found a bunch of pirates. They found a Vete, a immortal skeleton looking for a way to die. This session, before they head back to town, they decide, let's explore the rest of the house also a bit further. They decide to go up to the second most floor. They go quite careful through most of the first floor. They find some other rooms. At one point they find a rug that they are convinced is something special about, so much so that they take it with them. And they find an old lantern which is standing in such a way positioned that it is from quite far into the seas nearby, is visible to that. And they realize that from this house it could function as kind of a lighthouse and send signals to boats in the water. In one of the other rooms they also find an awful lot of spiders, two swarms of them one might say, and they crawl all over Cooper, and they manage to fight it, but at some point Kieran decides that, hey, maybe I can shoot some off with my bow and arrow. I think you might be able to deduce how that went. While they went up the stairs, they noticed that there were actually also stairs further upwards towards the attic, but those have collapsed, and it's possible to climb up, but it is a bit higher than they were hoping for. And as they're exploring, they went a bit further and they found that. Oh, I am almost forgetting the ever important contest. While they were exploring the upper floor, they found a couple of weak spots in the wood. Water damages had rotten parts of the wood, and they realized that it might not be safe to step on it, and that they prefer to jump over it. And as the nature of this party, they made a contest out of it, see how far everyone could get, which eventually went on heavy enough that Cooper and Treaticure fell through the floor. A layer below them wasn't not much of a big deal, but as they got up, as they came back up, they realized that now was a lot harder for them to get to the part where it was easiest to get up the attic floor. And the reason that's important is because that made them decide to, instead of take the long route, they decided we better just make a hole above us in the roof. And as they did so, they hear buzzing noises getting closer, of some large insectoids. They don't know what it is, and Cooper keeps on hacking until a large chunk of the roof falls down, and out of it come 10 Sturges, and they all fly towards Cooper. Before they manage to get to Cooper, Bulwark manages to shoot one of them down, but after that the remaining 9 all sting Cooper and he falls unconscious. Afterwards, Treaticure takes one deep breath and with a blast of lightning kills all of the Sturges, but as they go check up on Cooper, they realize it's too late for him. As the group realizes what happened, Bulwark says a prayer to the Raven Queen, but she doesn't respond, as well as Francesca, who searches through Cooper's belongings in search for something to tell her what he would have wanted to do with his body, because he obviously didn't leave any instructions or whatnot. Realizing that he is from the Feywilds, she decides that most likely would want to be returned to the earth, and the group buries him and has a small ceremony. The group returns to Saltmarsh, and they split up in two groups. Francesca, Triticure, and Bulwark go to the temple nearby and try and see if they can find anything out about how about Aveta and how maybe to help him. And Jamian and Kieran return to the inn as Jamian has promised that drinks are on him. As Francesca, Bulwark, and Triticure arrive at the temple, they find three people there. Two are adorned in clerical robes that they recognize as robes or containing symbols of Miroda, the goddess of agriculture. In the back of the temple, they see a half-orcish woman, one of the clerics, and a young nobleman. They're speaking, and in the temple itself, they see a young man, also in clerical robes. They approach the man and they ask him. He introduced himself as Welgar, and they ask him about the nature of undead, and we found, basically they tell him we found an undead creature that cannot be destroyed. How could we do that? And unfortunately, he says that he just recently donated all of his more arcane books on undead towards the library that is being established in Saltmarsh. And the more religious books, he does recognize both Francesca and Bulwark as clerics similar to him, and you realize that he probably can't help them more than they would know themselves. Bulwark also asks about ghost stories, more ghost stories near Saltmarsh, as one of his missions from the Raven Queen is getting rid of undead and unholy creatures. So he's always on the lookout for those. And Welgar knows two ghost stories. The first one is a ghost ship that during this time of year appears, and most sailors believe that if in some way you manage to help or point the way towards this ghost ship, they'll fulfill a wish for you. The other one is slightly more concrete, as it comes from the local wizard who lives in a tower not far out of Saltmarsh, who once explained to many people in Saltmarsh that underneath, deep underneath Saltmarsh, lies some strangely powerful source of necrotic magic, and Zenon is investigating this magic, but much more does the cleric himself, the Welgar, not understand about it. Well, Francesca and Bulwark are in conversation with Welgar. Triticure is listening in on the conversation of the nobleman and the half-orc priest nearby. As he's listening in, he hears that the young nobleman is no other than Ender Solomor, a, for Triticure, very relevant NPC. Anders, for context, has recently taken over as the head of his family after his mother's death. His mother, though declared dead, has technically only been lost at sea. And the reason he's now in this temple speaking with the priest is because he feels like without a proper send-off, his mother will be stuck at sea, or at least her soul will be stuck at sea forever. And he's looking for a way to give her that send-off. He is talking about all sorts of reckless things, and at the same time the half-orc is trying to get him to not do that, to realize that he doesn't have to put his own life in danger to make sure that his mother's body is recovered. As Triticure is listening to this, he walks up to them and exclaims, "So if I can find your dead mother, you won't sell my land to the dwarfs." And as he does that, basically everyone in the temple, to be fair, 5 people, are staring at him, and Anders stammers a bit. He tries to say something, but he just leaves. Which Triticure interprets as confirmation. If he finds his dead mother, his land won't be sold. As this is happening, Jamian spends some time on the market in Saltmarsh. It's raining a bit, and there are not a lot of people, but he sells some of the equipment that he found in the haunted house, and as he walks around, he does remember that there is about the wizard that lives nearby Saltmarsh, and decides to wait with his more magical equipment. While he's there, he hears some news about a war going on much further north, and how their general is losing favor, as the battle that she's fighting is looking increasingly, the odds are getting increasingly stacked against her, but she's refusing to leave. And as he's got all his things, Jamian waits at the bridge for the rest, so they can get back to the inn together. In the meantime, Kieran is already at the inn, as from everyone, he was clearly the most affected by the death of Cooper. He decides to go to the inn on his own and just starts drinking already. As he does so, he sees two figures entering the inn before him. The 2 figures both have black robes and a similar black mask that we would recognize as ice hockey masks. The 2 figures spend some time trying to get into the bar by knocking and making themselves known, hoping that someone opens up. Kieran just waits somewhere in the shadow and looks at what they're doing. At some point they decide that they've waited long enough, and they just break in. And at that point, Kieran decides to stealthily follow them. And he waits until they split up on the top floor, and there he, with his weapon drawn, as he doesn't trust the 2 at all, he approaches one of them. As Kieran approaches, the man turns around, seemingly hearing him beforehand, before he can get the drop on him, and notices the weapon drawn, and declares himself to be a follower of Ebreth, which is the god of the god of life and death. And for a bit of explanation, in my setting, the Raven Queen is more of a Grim Reaper type of figure, someone who guides souls to wherever their soul goes after their death, and Ebreth is more of a embodiment of life and death, as a force of nature, basically. And so the followers of Ebreth, though they have also churches and graveyards that they keep, they also have a special, basically a special force that deals with necromancers. As Kieran gets a drop on this person who at least claims to be part of it, he is wearing a symbol Kieran recognizes, but he exclaims that they have reason to believe that the owner of the inn was buying equipment and components that dealt with necromantic rituals, and they're also convinced that a certain delivery man might know more, or at least they're also looking for him. They describe this delivery man as a quite obvious fellow, literally a large dog, as they say it. I don't think Kieran literally told them, but he told them that he likely won't be returning. And after that, he decides to leave and wait outside of the inn for the rest of the group. So that was session 3. A lot heavier than I thought it would be. It was interesting because when Cooper died, his player was quite quickly over it. In the second part, I'll try and explain a little bit about how the combat initiative went and why it went so. Why it went the way it did. So with that, I'd like to ask my players to stop watching here again, and we'll go to the second part. Yeah, Mark? So, first character death. A lot earlier than I expected, I think, than anyone expected, especially in this situation as the place would happen. I was beforehand, I was thinking maybe I should just remove all encounters from this place, as it was originally meant for a level 1 party, and at this point they're all level 3. And the big threat, like the interesting part of the encounter is already, or of the fighting basically, is already gone. But I decided to keep it in, as I also was thinking like it would be odd if you, like this long abandoned house with with many ghost stories about it. It would be odd if like nothing dangerous or things were there. So I kept it in with with the necessary results. It did went over well, as the player himself got over it really quickly, and that did make it easier, at least for me as DM, to also continue the session and continue with things. And his new character, as when I'm recording this, has already been introduced and has been in session. It's also a very interesting and quirky character. But I do want to explain a bit about the initiative and how it went down. As Cooper was hacking up on the floor above them, the zoom was getting closer, and they were all getting ready for an attack. And so the underworld initiative, I divided the Sturges into 2 groups, but it didn't matter because in the end they both rolled an 18. But before that, Jamie and Bulwark and what's his name, Kieran, all had their turns. So Kieran decided not to do anything, as he the last time he shot an arrow didn't went very well, and so he was waiting for whatever came at them to get closer. Bulwark used his action to ready an Eldritch Blast, so as soon as something came he would shoot it, and Jamie used his action to hide and did it very well. And then came all the Sturges, 10 of them. As Bulwark shot one of them, they only had to have 2 HP, so that was easy enough. But after that, and that was also for me, at that moment I realized, like, they're all going through this one hole that Cooper just made, so he's directly underneath it. They're all gonna attack the thing that's threatening them. They're all gonna attack Cooper, and it says something that it required 9 Sturges to bring him down, and It was technically 8 as the last one just hit him for 2 death saves. And right after that, before anyone could heal him or do anything, it was Cooper's turn, which meant that he rolled death saving throw, and he rolled lower than a 10, so Cooper was dead. And after that, it was directly Triticure's turn, who now, with this swarm of Sturgis in front of him, could just easily use his lightning breath. They still only have 2 HP, so they're all dead. Yeah, so it only took, the whole thing took less than 6 seconds technically, because not a full round passed. But Cooper still died in it, and it was a bit odd. I honestly wasn't really expecting him to explore the mansion further, because they were talking, beforehand they were talking about bounties and how they wanted to get out after the pirates. So I was expecting him to basically directly go to Saltmarsh, back to Saltmarsh. So I had, mostly for everyone, I tried to make something in Saltmarsh that could happen that would be relevant to the character. And the whole thing that happened with Kieran, with the what are the faces, with the Order of Ebreth, that was as obvious maybe, but was meant to be a hook for Cooper to find out what was happening. Yeah, but that turned out to be a bit awkward. The whole Jamian who heard the news, one of the reasons why the general that is now losing ground is because the Zethrian company has appeared, and the Zethrian company is a mercenary company which was once created by Kieran's great grandmother. So I was hoping that he it was a bit of a stretch, but I was hoping that he might react to somebody about that. But in the end, everyone kind of found each other's things. I think only Triticure found his own thing. There's also a lot of things I didn't find, and it was easy enough for me to find move those to the next session, as they're still in Saltmarsh, and at this point it's getting a little bit late later in the day, but the whole adventure in the haunted house only took like their morning. Also, as I said, Triticure met Anders Solomor, the man who officially owns his land, who and directly made a very good impression on him. But yeah, Triticure is very desperate to find some way of not making sure that his land isn't sold. And for Anders, who is in the process of mourning his mother, when he heard that, the first thing he thought about was that this was some ploy of some political factions within Saltmarsh to make sure the dwarves don't get their hands on this mine, because there are a lot of people in Saltmarsh against the mine existing in general. And yeah, that's it. So it didn't went over well in multiple ways. And I honestly think that it's now, unless someone explains to him that Triticure isn't affiliated with like official members of Saltmarsh, but yeah, as you'll see in the next session, that's going to be a bit harder, as they actually start doing some business for exactly the people that Anders thought that sent Triticure to him. But unless they convince him that, it's probably going to be more likely now that he's going to sell that land to the dwarves. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I expect at least the second part of it will be kind of short, but that's okay. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye bye.